Hi, my name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO and founder of Third Stage Consulting Group. We're an independent digital transformation and ERP consulting firm, and wanted to chat today about a APQC report that came out not too long ago that covers some digital transformation research that the organization has just done. And we recently, as a company, put out our own 2019 ERP report and digital transformation report, which goes over metrics around what the average digital transformation looks like in terms of implementation time, cost, risk, results, all that good stuff. And for example, we found in that study that the average digital transformation takes 18 months for companies of all different sizes. We found that 50% of organizations experience some type of operational disruption at the time of their digital transformation. And you can actually download that 2019 ERP report off of our website by clicking the link below on my YouTube channel. But while I love our own research and we've got some great stuff in there, I also like looking at other organizations that are doing similar research, and APQC is no exception. And we are members of APQC. Our Third Stage consulting team uses them for their knowledge base and their process documentation, their industry best practices and whatnot. We incorporate that all into our consulting services. And this particular report is interesting because it covers the measures of digital transformation and some of the things that just to be aware of as you look to benchmark yourselves against what other organizations are doing. So I'm just going to flip through and highlight some of the highlights from the study. And you can see that they surveyed 300 people, represented over 25 different organizations, which is a very good sample size. And when we look at how participants in the study define digital transformation, it looks like from the way respondents responded that there's no one singular answer for what digital transformation is. It's a combination of digitizing data and information, automating processes, applying analytics, and enabling digital interactions and communications. Now, while this is the intent of organizations that are part of this study and that have gone through their own digital transformations, as we go through the data here, you'll see that there's a disconnect between what the intent is and what's actually happening on the front lines of these projects. So that brings us to the section of the report that you can find, by the way, on APQC's website at apqc.org. I believe you have to be a member to download this, which is why I'm just going through some of the highlights here for you in case you're not a member of APQC. But when we look at the state of digital efforts in the organization, this is really interesting because you see that about 87 or 88% of organizations are either in the midst of their digital transformation or they're about to start a digital transformation. The exception being the 5% that you see over here on the left. 5% of participants don't foresee going through a digital transformation anytime soon. 7.6% haven't started yet but intend to, and the remaining 88%, or whatever that number comes out to, which is the overwhelming majority, are in some various stages of their digital transformation. So clearly a lot of organizations in the market are either in the midst of a transformation or about to go through one, which means there's a lot of opportunity, but also a lot of risk that we've got to be thinking about as it relates to those projects. And then when we look at the scope of these transformations, this is really interesting too, because for all the talk of Agile and this whole Agile movement about let's just get something up and running, a minimum viable product, let's just get kind of an incremental piece of technology out there and mess with it and see what happens. That's seems to be a big buzzword lately, and a lot of organizations want to be agile, but at the end of the day, close to half of them, or actually just over half of them, are doing some sort of centrally managed approach to digital transformation. So the two boxes that you see on the right side, beginning with the 39% that centrally manage their portfolio of digital projects with a clear overarching strategy. Then there's 16% that have that same centrally managed portfolio, but they don't have an overarching strategy. And then you have 24% that have discrete digital projects that bridge multiple functions, and then 21% that are discrete digital projects managed by the business. And I guess you could consider those 21% the true agile types of projects, although the two boxes on the right that are centrally managed could in some cases be agile-esque in some ways as well, but the difference being that they do have a clear strategy in the case of the 39%, and they are being centrally managed rather than more of a decentralized approach to that. Now, what's really interesting is the box that you see on the right, some of the qualitative findings that APQC found in this study, is that organizations with centralized digital portfolios, they're better positioned to create clear parameters for technology decisions. They prioritize digital projects based on need and value. They understand the intersections and interdependencies across projects, and they measure the value of digital work against strategic goals. So that's really underscores what I view to be one of the big weaknesses of this whole agile movement. Is I think the agile movement kind of forces or encourages companies to get a little sloppy and act without diligence, whereas the traditional waterfall approach, as uncool as that may sound in today's day and age, it does give you a certain amount of structure when done right, and it does give you a certain amount of alignment with your overall corporate strategy, which is a key part of what makes digital transformation successful. And a key reason why so many digital transformation and ERP projects fail is because there is no clear strategy for what it is they're trying to accomplish with technology. And unfortunately, this whole agile movement kind of fuels that misalignment and some of the challenges that organizations were already having with their digital transformation. So it's interesting to see the mixed bag that organizations are facing with the ways they approach their digital transformation projects. So then when we look at what is driving these digital transformations, the top 5 reasons, which I think if APQC were to have done the study 10 or 20 years ago, and maybe they did do it and I just don't have the data in front of me, I would think these numbers are going to be very similar. When you look at the number 1 response, optimize core business processes. It's basic blocking and tackling. There's nothing new or sexy about that, but that's the number 1 thing that companies are trying to accomplish, followed very closely by building efficiencies through automation. And again, that's the same thing companies have been trying to do for 20 or 30 years with their ERP and digital transformation projects. And where the real low-hanging fruit is if companies could just figure out how to get the digital transformations right to accomplish the optimization of business processes and efficiency through automation, then we can really start focusing on that high-value stuff over on the right. Improve customer experience, establishing real-time data capabilities, all that stuff. That's where technology is going, and that's the real opportunity there. So the fact that so many companies are myopically focused on automating processes and becoming more efficient, which isn't a bad thing, it's just that they can't seem to even get past that to be able to get to this other stuff. And that goes back to the concept of third stage, how companies reach the third stage of success for their digital transformations. Those ones that are able to reach the third stage are the ones that get past the automation and the business processes, focusing more on customer experience, predictive analytics, cloud, mobile environments, et cetera. So this is interesting too. The leaders of digital transformation are still largely IT at 20%, although that number from other data and other research that I've seen over the years, that number seems to be coming down. Now you have corporate strategy groups that are leading, maybe not quite as much as IT, but a respectable second place at 18%. Transformation offices, that's something that's relatively new in the last decade. So you've got 17.5% of companies that are leading their transformation projects via a separate transformation office, 12% being led by the executive suite, and then 8% being led by standalone programs or centers of excellence. So good stuff, even though IT is the number 1 driver. Again, that's not a bad thing that IT be the driver, but at the end of the day, you don't want this to be an IT project. So there is some merit to having a corporate strategy group or a transformation office or your center of excellence driving these sorts of projects. Now, the measures used to track success, this is another thing where I feel like there's a lag between what companies want and intend of their transformations and what they actually see and what they actually focus on during the transformation. So you get a little bit of misalignment here as you look at some of these metrics. So tracking the success of digital transformation, good news, 95% of organizations did use some sort of quantitative measure or measures to track success. But the interesting thing is what types of measures they're looking at. So 63% use some sort of operational measures to track success of the project. So they looked at productivity, quality, innovation, collaboration were the top 4 operational measures used. Not a terrible number, but I would expect that to be a lot closer to 100% of companies that are looking at these sorts of transformations as a way to drive operational improvements. So it's kind of a mixed bag, good news, bad news here. The good news is that there are a decent amount, about 2 out of 3 transformations use operational measures as one of their measures of success. The bad news is that number could be a lot higher. And also, by the way, even of the ones that are using operational measures, again, you look at where the real value is, innovation and collaboration down below, which is third and fourth place. I'd love to see a day where the productivity and quality stuff doesn't become less important, but it becomes less of an issue and less of an obstacle, to where it's almost a foregone conclusion or a minimum ante to be able to go through a digital transformation to at least affect productivity and quality in a positive way, so that you can start focusing more on innovation and collaboration and the things that are really going to transform and improve your business. About half of organizations look at financial metrics. So again, good news, bad news. Good news, it's a measure. Companies are focused on it. Bad news, it's not a very high number. And if you dig into the numbers on the right, you see that cost reductions and ROI tend to be the main financial measures. That's okay. That's a good baseline, but really the real value is going to come is that revenue from existing business line or capabilities, revenue from new business line or capabilities. So really optimizing revenue and not just looking at efficiency and cost. So it gets back to the earlier point about if we could just figure out a way to get past efficiencies and that focus on driving productivity improvements to where we're looking at things like how do we innovate better, collaborate better to drive revenue, to enter new markets, to attract new customers. That's that piece of technology and digital transformation that it seems like a lot of organizations are missing. And then when we look at implementation, surprisingly, only 40% of organizations use implementation measures, which actually surprised me a lot to see that number. I would have expected that, if anything, to be the highest number, because it's such an immediate short-term type of metric that, at least with the clients we work with, they tend to focus pretty heavily on things like overall project timeline and overall cost. But of the ones that did look at implementation measures, 77% focused on project milestones, only 62% focused on usage or adoption of the software, and only 21%, or just under 21%, focused on the volume of automation. So how technology actually automated business processes. So that's pretty surprising given how much time and money we're spending on these projects, to focus fairly myopically on just project milestones and just hitting those milestones versus how do we get people to actually use the technology? How do we get the benefits we expect to see? I mean, that's where the real ROI comes from. So again, it's that sort of thing. If we can get past that base level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and get to that optimal level of self-actualization, to use that Maslow's hierarchy parallel, if we can get to that higher level to where we are focusing on usage and adoption, the volume of automation, benefits realized, that sort of thing, that's where the real value and the more successful transformations will come into play. And then 39% of digital transformations looked at customer measures. And of those customer measures that were used, customer satisfaction was number one, lead conversion rate, net promoter score, and customer loyalty were the other four. So another sort of surprising measure that I would hope over time that number comes up to where we are focusing more and more on the customer and not so much on the internal productivity and efficiency type of measures. And again, gets back to that point of third stage. How do we get to that third stage of success? We first need to make sure we can get that project off the ground as the first stage. Second stage is get all the baseline stuff in place, like your efficiencies and your implementing on time, on budget, the scope you expect to see. Third stage is when you actually get to that level of achieving those customer measures and improvements to the overall customer experience. And those are the companies that truly differentiate themselves from the companies that they get stuck in one of the first two stages. And then finally, this last slide here just gives you a quick overview of the types of organizations that participated. These are the top 5 industries, but as I mentioned before, APQC surveyed over 25 different industries in their sample. So I hope you found this information useful. I'm going to include some contact information here for APQC if you'd like more information. Again, if you'd like to download our ERP report with some more data and metrics like this, you can do so with the link at the bottom of your screen in the YouTube channel description or the video description. And I also encourage you to please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you'll continue to get updates for new videos as they come out. So hope you have a great day. Hope you found this helpful, and look forward to sharing more with you soon. Take care.